Good morning, New Zealand. Well, there's proposals to ban social media for under 16-year-olds. There's majority support for a bill which would define man and woman in legislation. And the proponents or the activists who want radical RSC are ramping up their efforts. We check out all this and more on Daybreak. Good morning. It is Wednesday, 7th of May. What do they call that? Hump day or something, sort of middle of the week. You've got over the shock of the start of the weekend, but you're still looking forward to the weekend. All right, let's check out the latest news. And, well, the big announcement yesterday, which did come out of the blue, is that the National Party have put a members' bill, private members' bill, into the ballot or into the biscuit tin to ban social media to under 16-year-olds. Luxon said his own journey about cell phone and social media use had actually been as a result of meeting Jonathan Haidt, who spoke at our forum on the family last year. He's the author of The Anxious Generation. He's the one calling or has linked the research. In fact, I saw some research out of the UK. Here we are. This is a percentage of UK teens depressed in relation to their hours per weekday on social media, and you're getting up to 4 hours per day. I think there'd be some teenagers that would be way beyond that, and far more harmful for girls. It's doing more harm to their mental health than to guys. But anyway, this bill has been proposed, and Winston Peters said the bill had all the hallmarks of being very necessary and that it should be a government bill, which is exactly our argument as well. Why is it a private member's bill? If it's that important to the government, get it over the line. The part of the problem is that the ACT Party, which are they're basically a leftist party with some conservative fiscal views, but they are a left-wing party. And they said that it's not workable. They're concerned about the practicalities of a ban, and they want it to go to an Education and Workforce Committee for an inquiry. Well, that can be done through the Select Committee, David, so I'm not quite sure what the opposition is. Look, even Labour leader Chris Hipkins said that it was something that they were open to, and Chloe Schwarbrick, of course, of the Greens, said it was a knee-jerk moral panic about young people and phones. Totally away from it. Look, I understand some of the concerns around this. The biggest pushback has been around digital ID. But I think we need to separate out. Look, at the moment, we already have certain forms of digital ID to confirm who we are. For example, we have our driver's license. If you apply for a power account, you have to prove who you are. In fact, there's been some things like, for example, when I've gone for my police records, I've had to provide digital proof of who I am. So there's passports, there are driver's licenses. We already do have a form of digital ID, but I understand the concern with adults. But we need to separate that out from the concerns for young people when they are first signing up. And as a society, we already have some age regulations in place. Tattoos, alcohol, gambling, smoking. Now, look, sure, kids get around those rules, but as a society, we are able to say those are illegal, and it empowers parents to be able to say that. I want to buy some alcohol, Dad, I'm only 13. Sorry, son, it's illegal. End of story. And we need to give support to parents. I think that's what parents are calling out for. There was a survey done last year which found that 68% of New Zealanders supported this legislation, 22% were opposed. But what that legislation also found was that there was kind of almost a defeatist reaction. A majority of those surveyed said social media was basically impossible to control. Well, I disagree. I think we should call on accountability for social media companies. It is the Wild West out there with no accountability. It's time we called them to account. And here's the interesting thing. The people that have created a lot of this, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, who created Facebook, they have probably the strictest rules on their children compared to many other parents because they know what's actually going on. But in March, a survey of 1,000 people, so this is last year, no, sorry, this is this year, 44% said they were concerned about children's interactions of social media, but a majority of those surveyed said the social media was basically impossible to control and that it was too hard for a parent to control their child's use. Well, this is where I think the law can back up parents. Now, I did actually look up a couple of American state bills. Recent one's just been passed in Virginia, which limits it to 1 hour use per day for under 16s. But I looked at the Florida one, and that said that it was banned up to the age of 14. For 15 and 16-year-olds, it just required parental consent. But it did look at what they would ban. Now, you'll hear this claim, you can't ban the internet. You can't ban Wikipedia and YouTube, as I heard David Seymour say yesterday. That's not the target. In fact, the Florida bill says that it targets social media sites that promote infinite scrolling, that display reaction metrics such as likes, and features autoplay videos and have live streaming and push notifications. It doesn't include websites and apps whose main function is email, messaging, or texting between certain senders and recipients. So that gets around that whole concern that isolated kids won't be able to contact each other, or that communication is gone, or you can't do research for your school activity. It's purely about those ones that are specifically targeting with algorithms children. And I just think as grown-ups, we need parents and the government with the enforcement of legislation to work together on this one. We just can't let these social media companies get away with it. And the other argument, of course, that people push back is they say, how can the social media companies do age verification, etc.? Hey, social media companies are very smart. They know exactly what they're doing. They've got the technology. It's being developed all the time, especially around age verification. If you want proof of how smart social media companies are, once you've finished watching Daybreak, have a little discussion with the family about a possible trip to Hawaii, and then see how long before holidays for Hawaii start getting advertised on your feed. So they are smart enough for that. And the other thing, concerns about personal information being held for the age verification. In the Florida law, it actually says that social media companies have to delete the personal information once they've verified the age. And in fact, parents can bring civil lawsuits against companies for failing to do so. So the whole onus is on the social media companies. So, yeah, I think it should be a government bill. At least we should have the discussion, and at least this bill has enabled that. But I would say, Labor, get on board. Look, hey, even the New Zealand Herald editorial agreed with me, which that's got to be a first. Another thing that happened earlier this week, and it came out just after I did Daybreak on Monday, is that a poll showed that there's majority support for the New Zealand First Bill, which defines man and woman in legislation. Look, I know a lot of people say, why do we even have to do this? Why do we have to clarify it? Well, that's how far the pendulum has swung towards stupidity. And so we've got to swing it back. But we found majority support. Look, the media trashed this bill when it first came out. Remember when Winston Peters proposed this bill and the media dumped on him, and left-wing parties dumped on him and said there's more important things? Well, and they called it populist. Well, actually, it's not populist. It's popular. And there's majority support, 52% support, only 29% opposed, and 19% were unsure, which is kind of weird. But interestingly, there was lots of support amongst ACT, New Zealand First and National voters. So they could make this a government bill and get it across the line. And yeah, it's good to know that there is some common sense there. Rightio, the proponents for radical relationships and sexuality education, RSE, are constantly writing articles in newspapers and getting lots of profile. The newspaper editors giving them lots of profile. The latest one was in the Post yesterday, and it was by the author of the 2020 Radical Guidelines, who is Katie Fitzpatrick from the University of Auckland. Let me just read a couple of excerpts. She says, the draft guide is very simplistic. It goes against the last 20 years of research. This is the new guidelines that are out, and contradicts the advice of the World Health Organization. Well, that's actually got to be a good thing, doesn't it? It takes sexuality education in schools backwards, apparently, according to her. And the reason is because it leaves out certain words. Let me read you the list of words that she's concerned aren't in the RSE new framework. Equity, identity, sexism, feminism, queer, gender diversity, and misogyny. In fact, she says the word gender only appears alongside discussion of gender stereotypes, which reflects a very narrow and outdated approach. Indeed, gender is reduced to the terms male and female. And all other words connected with gender, such as boy, girl, woman, man, non-binary, trans, etc., are simply not there. Is she complaining, or is she actually saying that's a good thing? It's a good thing. She says the draft guide is also completely silent on the provision of health services, such as nurses and counsellors in schools. Well, that's got nothing to do with sexuality education, Katie. And whether schools should be safe spaces for women, LGBTQI students, and teachers. Yep, apparently relationships and sexuality education is all about keeping teachers safe. Who knew that? She says school toilets and uniforms are not mentioned at all. Well, that's because it's got nothing to do with relationships and sexuality education. And just finally, she says, statements about reproduction and contraception are strangely worded and read as if they're from another era. For example, at Year 8, which is intermediate, the draft states that students will understand that, quote, male and female bodies have reproductive systems that work together during fertilization, end quote. Well, that sounds okay. Biological. She says this statement is curiously decontextualized and places sex only in the context of heterosexual reproduction. How quaint and inaccurate. How deeply problematic. Yeah. Well, that's not from another era. It's just from basic biology. But anyway, the point about this is that the submissions to give feedback on the guidelines need to be in by this Friday, end of this Friday. We're sending out a reminder newsletter at about 9 o'clock this morning, and but you can go to our website and you can see the guidelines about that. Right, the time is flying. Just quickly, I did laugh at this one. Students are in shock. Law students are in shock. Absolute shock at Victoria University because they may actually not be allowed laptops because of the fear of AI, and they're going to have to go back to actually writing the answers to their exams. Having spent 4 years at Auckland University doing exams, long exams, 3 hour even, and writing, you know, halfway through the exam, you got to shake your hand to get some feeling back into it. I thought, oh, well, that's kind of like justice, isn't it? That the younger generation actually have to go through that pain of writing for a long period of time. Interesting story out of the UK. Scotland's top social worker says that gender ideology has done untold harm and they've abandoned child protection principles. She said that officials had failed to protect children by ignoring existing equality laws and ordering staff to impose harmful gender ideology rather than risk criticism from trans lobby groups. She was the former director of Children's Services Children's First, so a bit like Ranga Tamariki, an ex-chairwoman of the Scottish Child Law Centre, and she said promoting ideology has caused far-reaching problems for children, particularly the most vulnerable. The reason she's speaking up is because of the UK Supreme Court, which has defined male and female and based on biology. So suddenly she's found her backbone. I would just say, why didn't they speak up earlier? Look, I know why, because they thought they were going to get sacked or suspended. That's how much fear and cancel culture has been. But there is a new freedom to speak up against gender ideology now. I'm just about out of time. Just finally, new study tells us nothing new, but says that using marijuana during pregnancy is linked to poor fetal development, low infant birth weight, dangerously early deliveries, and even death, according to a new meta-analysis of research. And it was published in JAMA Pediatrics, analysed 51 studies over 21 million participants. Use of marijuana during pregnancy was linked to a 52% higher risk of preterm delivery before 37 weeks and a 75% higher risk of low birth weight. 6 studies looked at the impact of cannabis on mortality. The studies found a 29% higher risk of infant death associated with the use of marijuana during pregnancy. Once again, we dodged a bullet by voting no and going against the Drug Foundation, Helen Clark and Chloe Schwalbeck on the cannabis referendum. Just one other thing, there'll be lots of talk about Pink Shirt Day. It is Friday week. If you know of people who are thinking of doing it, or it's in your school and some teachers are maybe thinking of doing it, get them to watch our blog on it and actually look at some of the material that is being pushed in schools. It would be nice if it was just about all bullying of all students, but it's not. It's actually about LGBT indoctrination. All right, your comments have been flying through. I'll just quickly check a couple. We've got lots of good mornings here. Dean says everyone can be monitored. This is around ID monitoring. That's true, Dean. Just walk down the road and probably 7 surveillance cameras have filmed you. Catherine says, it saddens me seeing very small children being given a device to shut them up and keep them quiet. Foo Dog says they are listening to you now, Bob. Yes, they probably are. I'm probably going to get advertisements for Hawaii now, which may not be a bad thing. And let's just check my Facebook. Rosie says, if you're born male, you're a man, and if you're born female, you're a woman. The end. Yeah, I wish it was that simple, Rosie. Unfortunately, some politicians aren't that bright. Alex says, National's so concerned about protecting teens and young people. What about protecting them from puberty blockers? Very good point. And let's just check my other page. Oh, lots of good mornings. Good morning, Var. Good morning, Raywin. Good morning, Satita. And all the others that are watching. Actually, the number watching has been increasing regularly, so you're obviously getting used to the 7:30. Simon O'Connor will be here tomorrow morning at 7:30 for Solid Ground, and then tomorrow night, Simon and I will be discussing the week in politics. Lots to talk about, especially about that pay equity claim as well. Simon can explain that to me, what that is all about. Anyway, we're over time. Have a great day. See you later.